What's up, YouTube? You know what time it is. It's Mighty Fan time, and got a special vid here for the jerseys. Um, I was asked a bit back if I could show some of the Flyers jerseys I own, and I didn't think it would take me this long to get to that request, but I apologize. I forget the name of the guy who asked for it, but today is the 2019 Stadium Series. Well, tonight, will be the game, Flyers versus the Penguins. So, pretty big game tonight, 8 Eastern on NBC. Battle of PA Part 2, if you will, for Stadium Series. They played each other a couple years ago. Flyers lost at Pittsburgh and Heinz Field, so hopefully we get... In fact, the Flyers still have to win an outdoor game. They're 0 for 3 so far. Hopefully we can get lucky 4 tonight at the home of the Eagles, Lincoln Financial Field. Maybe some of that Super Bowl, Super Bowl 52 magic can rub off on the Flyers today, and they can finally win an outdoor game. But it is what it is. As fans, all we can do is watch. So we'll see. But I thought, what better day than today, to kind of show some of the collection. I'm not going to show every jersey. That would just be a little redundant and just take too long. But I'm going to show a portion of the collection. I'm going to try to pick some of the more unique jerseys, and also different jerseys that represent different eras. I have just about the whole history of the Flyers uniform in the closet over here, spanning multiple different eras. There's a few I don't have in here that are upstairs that are kind of packed away. I have to still get to. But, in fact, this closet is pretty much done. I mean, I don't think I can fit anything else in here. So at some point, I'm probably going to have to bring a rack or something down here, put some of the overflow in here. But in this closet, I do keep all my Sixers, some college Sixers, Phillies, and Flyers uniforms. There's some other odds and ends in here. I got some Phantoms jerseys. I got a Philly Firebirds jersey, which was a old... what was it? Yeah, CHL. I forget the league that they played in, but they were before the Flyers, actually. It wasn't NHL. It was another league. But almost like a minor league or whatever it was back then, or just another league, for hockey. And I have a Firebirds jersey in there, and then I got the all different Flyers. So the other closet, of course, back here is Eagles related. So, But anyhow, enough rambling on. Let's get into the product, as it were. First of all, I am wearing, for this vid, the 2019 Stadium Series uniform, the sweater, if you will, in hockey terms. This is what they're going to wear tonight. The Penguins are wearing a yellow one. You'll note it has more of like a shadowed version of the logo. Penguins doing the same thing. This is a Claude Giroux jersey. The captain, of course. Got news yesterday that the young, good goalie we got, Carter Hart, will not be starting. He's been struggling the last couple of days. He's young, though. He's only 20, so I'm not overly concerned about it. But he's put together a solid season when he's, for the most part, so far this season, and he's the future. So, we finally seem to have gotten a good goalie, hopefully. So it will be Brian Elliott between the pipes tonight, but hopefully Carter, rebounds in the weeks to come and months to come and can finish the season strong. But yeah, so originally I wanted to get a Carter Hart, and I guess with what's happened, I guess I'm kind of, in a way, I'm not to say glad, but just, I'm at least, pleased that I was able to get a jersey of a player who's going to play in the game. Maybe Carter gets in there. Who knows? I mean, if Elliott struggles big time or whatever, they do a goalie switch or Elliott gets hurt. Hopefully not, but goalie switch, then Hart gets in there. But whatever. But I did get the Giroux some weeks ago from Dick's Sporting Goods, and so this is it. It's got the captaincy. This is the Adidas version. Fanatics has their breakaway version, but this one's a little more detailed. So I wanted to get the Adidas one. The 28, of course, big on the sleeves. It's got the black stripe, the black cuff going up a bit for the sleeves, and you see it again. Of course, the big numbers because they're outdoors, so people can see them, so people can know who's doing what. Although with the Flyers' current alternate uniform, which is the Stadium Series uniform from a few years ago, they kept the big numbers on the sleeves, even though, yeah, you don't need the huge numbers when you're playing inside, but it is what it is. But, yeah, that's why whatever team plays an outdoor game, they're always going to have the big numbers, at least for the past how many years. So Flyers have done it. You got the logo there in Flyers and Penguins colors. I just got my hat on, Stadium Series hat. And, of course, the name on the back, Giroux 28. And got the Adidas logo back there, too. The shield right in the front there. Solid jersey. This is like hit or miss. Some people really like these. Some people don't. I like them. I like these better than the black uniforms they were a few years ago, although those have grown more on me since. But, I think this is nice because, orange is really, to me, it's like the Flyers color. When they wear the black jerseys, it's fine. I get it. But to me, it's orange. Or white for the road. But the orange, the home orange, that's, for me, that's Flyers. And I know it hasn't always been that way. In fact, most of their history, it was white. They wore the white jerseys at home, but then they switched some years ago to wear the color. And ever since, to me, orange is home. But it is what it is. But anyhow, let's get into the collection. See what I can dig out here. Okay. So, if we're going to start with Flyers jerseys, of course, we got to go with the Bully days of the 70s. Now, the Flyers came into the league in 1967 as an expansion team, along with other teams like the Los Angeles Kings, and so the Pittsburgh Penguins, and so on and so forth. The St. Louis Blues as well, and they were the team in the expansion era to win a cup quicker than anyone else. In fact, they went back-to-back in 74 and 75. They were the Bullies, of course, the Broad Street Bullies, the famed Broad Street Bullies. They liked to win games and win fights back then, and they were very good. And a lot of those players came to Philadelphia from Canada. They didn't know anything about Philadelphia. They couldn't even tell you anything about Philadelphia before they came here. But a lot of those players, most of those players, if not all those players, after they retired, made a home here. And so they've always been, part of the group that's been one of the most beloved in this area, of course, for having that success, but of course also for what they meant in the community and wanted to make their homes in the community also. And here's one of those players. This is a Mitchell & Ness version of the 70s jersey. This, for the time, would have been the road jersey. As I said, now it would be considered the home. Back then it was the road, and it's the Hammer, Dave Schultz. And it's cool because the Flyers went back to the nameplate some years ago in their uniforms. And back then, when they first started wearing names on the uniform, they had a nameplate. And so for years, the Flyers didn't. And then they went back to it as an alternate uniform. And then they made it their regular home orange. And then they went similar with the road, which I'll talk a little more about later. But this is the Schultz jersey. And as you notice, it has the white going down the sleeve, turns into black, kind of like it does on the cuffs of this uniform. It's got the 8 double stitched on both sleeves. Again, Schultz single stitched on the nameplate, the double stitched for the 8, and the Flyers crest. Now the Flyers crest, basically their logo has not changed since 1967. There's been a few times this looked a little different, but the overall design has never changed. This design, which is the Flying P, has never changed. This has been around since 1967. It's still the logo you see on the crest of their uniform today. Like I said, it's been altered a few times. It's been kind of updated even once. It was short-lived. They went back to the original look. But this is the logo. This is one of the longest-lasting logos in sports. And again, from 1967 until 2019 and beyond, this is their crest. This is their logo. It's pretty much known as the Philadelphia Flyers logo. You go anywhere, you can say, what team is this? People pretty much know. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, this is a Dave the Hammer Schultz, Mitchell & Ness Flyers, 1970. I want to say this is a 74, 75. It's usually one of those years they make it for. 74, 75 season. And which unfortunately was the last season they won a cup. 1974, 75. They won in 74 and 75. back-to-back cups. Then they went back in '76, but lost to the Canadiens. They had a lot of injuries, though, including the great Bernie Parent. Did not play much in that series, but they lost to the Canadiens in '76, although Reggie Leach won the Conn Smythe after that series for the best playoff player. That award, a lot of people think it's for the finals. It's really for the playoffs as a whole. The player who wins the Conn Smythe at the end of the Stanley Cup, it is for the Stanley Cup, but it's also for the playoffs in general. And Reggie Leach, I believe, led the NHL in playoff goals that year, or points, or whatever it was. So he took home the Conn Smythe in 1976. And the other Flyer who took home a Conn Smythe in a losing effort was in 1987. Ron Hextall did it when they lost in 7 to the Edmonton Oilers. So 2 Flyers have done that in a losing effort. That's something. And so this is 74, 75. And of course, when you think of the Flyers from the 70s, you think of the Bullies. You do think of various players. Maybe, obviously, 2 of the more famous would be Bernie Parent and this guy right here, Bobby Clarke. Clarkie, of course, number 16, one of the all-time great captains in Flyers history, one of the all-time great players in the history of the NHL. And this is his 74-75 jersey, uniformed by Mitchell & Ness. It's got the captaincy in the front, of course, the crest, everything else, the numbers, and all that on the sleeves, just like it was for Schultz. But obviously, if I'm going to show the Flyers collection, I got to show a Clarkie jersey, right? So there's Bob Clarke, number 16. Same as the Schultz, though this is an older run. The Schultz is more of the newer run. Right before Mitchell and Ness stopped doing hockey, they lost the contract, I believe, so they stopped making hockey. But hopefully they get it back at some point, because they made some really nice jerseys and stuff over the years for hockey. And hopefully they get the contract back at some point so they can start pumping out some more stuff. To be continued or determined on that, I guess. But we'll see. All right. They're kind of wedged in here, so you'll excuse me for taking a little time sometimes to get these out. So this, at the time, would have been the home uniform. This, of course, being one Bernard Marcel Parent, the great Bernie Parent. Only the Lord saves more than Bernie Parent. This is the saying back then. So this, again, would have been the home jersey for the time. This is, again, 74-75. Parent one on the back. And there you go. Bernie Parent. All right, so we're going from the 70s into the 80s, which was a pretty good decade for the Flyers. Obviously, in the 70s, the Flyers won the back-to-back cups. I did forget to mention, in 1976, they were also the only team in the NHL to beat the Soviet Red Army team. The Soviets at that time, they had their basically their all-star team, which was unbeatable. They came. They did a tour in the NHL. It's funny. Like, you wouldn't imagine something like that happening today, but back then they kind of toured. They played all different teams in the NHL, and they beat every team in the NHL, and most of them quite handily. The last team they played in '76 was the Flyers, and they played them last because the Flyers were the defending 2-time Stanley Cup champions. So the Soviets wanted to play the Flyers last, as like the grand finale. The game was played at the Spectrum. The Soviets came in, they played the game, and they did say before the game, they weren't very happy after the game, but they did say after the game, we want to see what the Broad Street Bullies are all about. We want to play, them. We want to see what their game is. So the Flyers showed it to them. And the Flyers, obviously, look, they were a great team. Everybody remembers, people who might not know the history as well, kind of think of the Broad Street Bullies as just a bunch of tough guys, who played hockey. But they were very skilled players. In fact, the LCB line, which was Bobby Clarke, Reggie Leach, and Bill Barber, were one of the top scoring lines in the history of the NHL. Very skilled. And obviously, we know Bernie Parent in net. This was a very good team. They could play tough, but they could also play skilled. So the Flyers played their game against the Soviets. The Soviets weren't quite ready for it, although they thought they were. The Flyers kind of introduced them to who they were, and it got to a point where the Soviets were losing the game. They actually left the ice. For those of you who might not know the story, they left the ice during the game because they had enough. They thought the Flyers were playing too rough. And as the story goes, the late, great former owner of the Flyers, Mr. Snyder, of course, Ed Snyder, went into the Soviets' locker room and basically asked through a translator what's going on. The Soviets said they didn't want to play anymore. And Ed Snyder said, well, okay, that's okay. Well, if you don't want to play, that's fine, but then you don't get paid. And the Soviets came back on the ice. Finished off the game, lost the game. The Flyers were the only team to beat them that year during their tour. And that was it. There were some very mean things said about the Flyers afterwards in the Russian newspapers, but you know, it is what it is. They wanted to play the Flyers. They wanted to experience what Flyers hockey was all about, and the Flyers showed them. Can't say they didn't warn them. But anyhow, the 70s were a very good era, of course, for the Flyers, winning back-to-back cups, getting to third straight, losing to the Canadiens in 1976. But they had a lot of great moments. And into the late 70s, of course, some of the old familiar names were gone. Some new ones came aboard. The Flyers were still a very productive team. They lost in the Cup Finals in '81 to the Islanders, who, of course, were winning 4 straight Cups at the time. Very controversial way that series ended. There was an offsides that should have been caught on an Islander in Nassau Coliseum, and of course led to the go-ahead and winning goal of the series. Flyers would go back in '85. They would lose to. You may have heard this guy, the name of this guy, Wayne Gretzky. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, he was pretty good. And the Edmonton Oilers. They lost to them again in '87. Although in '87 they took them to 7 games. And that was quite a feat for any team against that great Oilers dynasty at that time. After the series, Wayne Gretzky called this man the best goalie he's ever had, the toughest goalie he's ever had to beat. And that's pretty high praise when you think about it coming from the great one. So the Flyers would lose in '87 to the Oilers as they did in '85, although they did take them to 7 games. So the '80s was a pretty good era for the Flyers too. Of course, names like Rick Tocchet, Ron Hextall, Tim Kerr, Mark Howe, many great players. Some players in the Hall of Fame, like Mark Howe in the Hall of Fame. Players, fan favorites over those years. And the Flyers, of course, like I said, had a lot of success and didn't, take home a cup, but they were pretty successful in the 80s. So here is the 1987 Mitchell & Ness version of the Ron Hextall jersey. This would, again, at the time would have been the road jersey. Today it would be considered the home. But this, as you can see, a different style. This is what the Flyers started wearing in the 80s, and they kept this style going through the 90s, the late 90s, I would say, early 2000s. As you see, no nameplate, though. So, well, there's a nameplate, but it's not colored as such. But you see, just the Hextall single stitch, 27 double stitch. Some of the aspects of the jersey they kept the same, and then they added some things. The stripe, of course, on the sleeve and such, did different things. The kind of stripe piping going down, just a little different. But as you can see, the crest remained the same, and so there it is. Believe it or not, that's the only 80s era Flyers jersey I have in the collection. There's some other players I wouldn't mind getting, like Rick Tocchet or Tim Kerr or Mark Howe. I just haven't been able to add any of those to this point. So we're going to move from the 80s. We're going to move quickly from the 80s to the 90s. Because that's when I started really following the Flyers, was the 90s. And of course the 90s ushered in with the Lindros era. And we talked about the LCB line. There was another pretty famous line that the Flyers had for a time. Of course, the Legion of Doom line. Of course, that was Eric Lindros, John Leclaire, and Michael Renberg. And they were quite a line. The era of the 90s was not as fruitful as the 70s and 80s as far as going to cups. They only went to the one in '97, which is the first time I ever saw them in a cup. I was too young for the 80s runs that they had. But '97 was the first time I saw the Flyers in the cup finals. They did lose. They lost to the Red Wings in a sweep. The Red Wings would become a dynasty. I do find it kind of interesting. We talk about the Flyers losing in cups. The teams that they've lost to in cup finals is like no shame. The Canadiens, the Islanders dynasty when they won 4 in a row, the Oilers, and then you lost to the Red Wings, who became a dynasty. You lose to the Blackhawks, who became a dynasty. Yeah, you know, you're not always going to win, and sometimes the team you lose to, you see what they've done, what their body of work ends up being. Sometimes it isn't the greatest, but sometimes it is. And it's just the case for the Flyers. You know, the teams they've lost to turned out being some pretty great teams in the history of the sport. But anyhow, 97 was the first time I saw them in the finals. Although they did exercise some demons. Before losing to the Red Wings in the Cup Finals in 4 straight, they did beat the New York Rangers, one of their chief rivals, in the Eastern Conference Finals. And 2 of those players who were on the Rangers were 2 of the players who were on the Oilers teams who beat them over the years. Of course, that was Gretzky and Mark Messier. So, you know, they did lose in the finals to the Red Wings in 4, but they got there for the first time since 85, and they beat some pretty good players to get there. So this is the jersey representing that 97 Cup Finals. It's the first time the Flyers were in the Cup Finals that they had a logo for the finals. There's the Cup Finals logo from 97. This, at the time, again, would have been the home jersey the Flyers wore. First 2 games of that series were played at the Spectrum. They lost both, of course. They lost in a sweep. Then they went to the Joe and lost the 2 games in Detroit. But it is what it is. What can you do? It was just Detroit's time. And the light went out. But anyhow, the light went out in the Joe. So, anyhow, I'll just finish off this video, then I'll take care of that. But this, again, would be Eric Lindros, one of the great players in Flyers history. Hall of Famer. His number's retired, of course. Number 88 with the Flyers. And this, again, is his 97 Cup Finals home jersey. This would be from the time. 88's on the sleeve. This is a CCM. This is a vintage CCM jersey. It's the first non-Mitchell & Ness that I've shown to this point. And some might be wondering what the first Flyers jersey I ever owned. Actually, the first Flyers jersey I ever owned is not here. It's actually upstairs somewhere. It's a John Leclaire. The first Flyers jersey I ever owned was a John Leclaire. Again, it would have been the home white at the time. And I got it around the time they were, in 97 when they were making their Cup Finals run. It's a starter replica, Leclaire number 10. And I have that one. Like I said, it's upstairs somewhere. I didn't actually get it down here in the closet, but at some point I probably will. The second one I ever owned, though, is this one that I'm about to show. And again, we stay in the 90s. This is Eric Lindros. This, again, would have been, at the time, the road jersey. And there it is with the captaincy in the front. This is a Nike. Now, I actually got this from JCPenney's in 1998. I remember the year after they went to the finals. I wanted a Lindros jersey, and was able to pick one up from the JCPenney store at King of Prussia Mall back in 1998. So this jersey goes back that far. So there it is. Again, this would have been the road at the time. Now, of course, would be considered the home, but. Now, the 90s also ushered in something different with the Flyers for the first time in their franchise history. I'm sorry if my voice isn't as good right now. I'm a little far away. But for the first time in their franchise history, the Flyers would adapt an alternate uniform. It's the first time they ever did it. It was in the 90s, late 90s. And here it is. This is the original black jersey that the Flyers wore for a time. This, again, would have been their alternate jersey. This is Brenda Moore, who's doing some really good things with the Hurricanes now as a head coach. Also won a cup with the Hurricanes years ago, but he was a Flyer. He was a great Flyer for many years. Wore the alternate captain A for a time. And, again, this is his starter replica of the... That's a long name. of the era. And, again, that's the first time the Flyers ever wore a black uniform and an alternate uniform, and they did this back in the late 90s, so that's when this jersey goes back. And this was another Penny's pickup, too, I believe. I got this at JCPenney's, so many years ago. So we go from the 90s to the 2000s, and I do want to show this jersey. It's one of those players from the 2000s that was pretty good for the Flyers. It also has the NHL 2000 logo on the front. This is a Simone Gagne jersey, and that is how his name's pronounced, not Gagne, Gagne. This was a custom jersey, so the numbers are a little higher than they should be, but for the sleeves, but you know, nonetheless, still very nice. I got this on eBay years ago, back in the 2000 season, and at the time, Simone was a rookie, so I got his rookie jersey right here. And he went on to have a very nice career with the Flyers, and then ended up winning a cup with the Kings many years later. But always will be known as a great Flyer for many, you know, for those years when he was here. And at the time, again, this would have been the home uniform. So then the Flyers got a little creative. So the logo had always been the same. They never touched the logo. They had an alternate black jersey. They never touched the logo until they put out the metallic jersey. So they made this one for a time. This was their alternate uniform. And as you can see, it's more of an embossed logo. Kind of more, you know, funky there. Again, this didn't last very long. This is the only jersey I have that's actually done up for a player. I got this on deep discount at the Wells Fargo Center when they were doing a blowout sale. And the player is Marty Braun, who was a goalie for a time with the Flyers. But it's the only player that I have of this particular jersey. I do have a blank in it too. But, you know, there's aspects of it I like. There's aspects of it that, yeah, you know, whatever. But, hey, they tried something different. You know, people were saying the Flyers should try something different. Their uniform that looks the same all the time. So they did this, and there were people who weren't very happy. So they did away with it. But this is a CCM replica version of it. But, yeah, Marty Braun, who now I believe is a commentator on NHL Network. At last I saw him. Now, the Flyers, again, you know, they believe in their history. So years would pass, and they would go back to their, you know, a little more modern version of it, but they would go back to their kind of original look. They brought back the orange. You know, they wore the black uniform for a while as their home uniform. And then the fans, you know, being traditionalists that the Flyer fans are, said, we want to see the orange again. We want to see the orange again. So the Flyers brought this uniform out as an alternate uniform, which then later became their everyday home uniform. And here it is. This is a Reebok replica of the captain at the time, Mike Richards, who captained the Flyers to a Stanley Cup Finals appearance in 2010. And then, of course, won the finals with the Kings. Basically, we called them Flyers West at the time. They had so many former Flyers: Carter, Richards, Gagne, and the list goes on. But then when he was a Flyer, and I thought he was a pretty decent captain, you know, for his time here. And they did bring back the nameplate as well, white nameplate with the name. And there's the 18. Again, this is a replica Reebok, but I got it back when they wore this as an alternate uniform, which then, like I said, some time later would become their everyday home uniform. But this is, at the time, it was the alternate. You can kind of see the stripe on the bottom, too, kind of harkening back to their old look. So, yeah. So I just spoke of 2010, and the light came back. There you go. It's a sign. So... I did speak of 2010, the Cup Finals. I was glad the Lindros 97 Cup Finals jersey is one of a more recent pickup, and I did want to get it because I didn't have a 97 Cup Finals, but I had this one for a while, and so I have the two jerseys that represent the two times so far I've seen the Flyers in the Cup Finals. So this is the 2010 Cup Finals when they lost to the Blackhawks in 6 on that crazy Patrick Kane overtime goal. But there's the logo, there's the crest. This, again, would be the home jersey, which we know it as today. Like I said, the Richards at the time, when that one was the alternate at the time, but then it came to home. So here it is. One of the all-time great playoff point scorers, Daniel Brire. That's his jersey right here. Only time he went to a finals was with the Flyers, losing, of course, in 6 to the Blackhawks. But he was a great point scorer for many years, no matter where he played, whether it was Buffalo, Flyers, you know, wherever. He was a terrific point scorer. And now he works for the Flyers organization. So I tell you, a lot of players, they come back. Must be something about the area. And now I do want to show, since we are talking about the Stadium Series today, I do have one uniform representing all the outdoor games the Flyers played in. And the interesting thing is the Flyers have brought these uniforms back. So this at the time was the 2010 the Winter Classic when they played against the Bruins. And this is the jersey representing that game. This is a Chris Pronger Reebok replica. And the Flyers would later adapt this as their road uniform. So at the time they wore it kind of as a throwback. You know, they were on the road, and as a throwback, you know, they were wearing it, you know, harkening back to their history when they played the Bruins and lost to the Bruins in the stadium in the Winter Classic at the time. And years later, they would adapt this as their road uniform. So now you see them wearing it all the time as the road uniform. At the time, they only wore this for the Winter Classic. And you see the logo right there. And yeah, so they did lose, I believe, in overtime. I think it was like 2-1 or whatever to the Bruins. But that's the jersey representing that game. And then some years later, the Flyers would host a Winter Classic against the New York Rangers. It didn't go well. They lost that one too. But here's the logo from 2012. And this is a Claude Giroux. Now, at the time when I got this from Modell's. It did not have the alternate A logo on it. Now, Claude was one of the alternate captains. In fact, I believe, if memory serves right, they did not have a captain that year because the captain at the time was Chris Pronger, but he was out for the year. So I don't believe the Flyers had a player wearing the C that year, unless I'm mistaken. And the memory isn't as good as it used to be. But they did have a couple guys wearing the A, including Claude Giroux. I had the A put on it at the Wells Fargo Center in their team shop there. They do customization. And the person looked at me when I first said I want the A put on. They're like, but that's Claude Giroux. I said, yeah, but in 2012 he was the alternate captain. He didn't become the captain yet. And they're like, oh, that's right. It's a stadium. It's Winter Classic jersey. So anyhow, but there is the Keystone A on the front, as put on by the good pros there at the Wells Fargo Center. Years after I got this jersey, there you see the back. And the Flyers did adopt this jersey as their alternate jersey for a time. I wish they kept it. This, to me, is still one of the best Flyer jerseys. I love the look of this. I love that kind of old school look with the numbers and all, just how it is. I love the Keystone logo for the captaincy or alternate A that they wore. To me, this is one of my all-time favorite Flyer uniforms. I wish they would bring it back as an alternate uniform. I don't think they will, but it's just... It has a lot going on it. I really like it. Like I said, it's really cool. Wish they won that game. And for the first time, they had strings on the front of their uniform. In fact, I like the uniform so much, even though I already had his Winter Classic uniform, I got his regular season alternate jersey with the captaincy. This is, of course, when he was the captain, as he is today. Claude Giroux, this is, again, would have been the alternate at the time. Got this one pretty cheap off eBay some years ago. But I wanted to get it with the C on there just because it just has that extra flair. And, of course, the Keystone. I just love that. So, but this would have been their regular season alternate jersey after they wore it, in 2012 as their Winter Classic, Wish they wore it still, but, you can't, there's some things in life you just can't do anything about. All right, moving along. And this is the first time they played in a Stadium Series. Of course, the Winter Classic, then the Stadium Series was in 2017. They played in Pittsburgh at Heinz Field. They lost that game. I believe, I want to say the game in Boston was at Fenway Park, if I'm not mistaken. And, of course, they played at Citizens Bank Park, home of the Phillies, and they played at Heinz Field where the Steelers play. Lost to the Penguins. But this is the uniform that you see them wearing today as their alternate. This was the Stadium Series jersey some years ago, and then they readopted it this season as their alternate uniform, and they kept the big numbers on the sleeves. And I still would like to get one. I'm thinking if I get any player, it would be Sean Couturier, because I don't have a Couturier, and I'll get the A put on there. But again, this was the Stadium Series uniform from 2017 when they lost to Pittsburgh. Hopefully we can avenge that tonight. We'll see. You know, I have others in here, but I just want to show a couple more. So, again, at a time, this was the alternate uniform, and of course, as we know, they adopted it as their home. So this is the current home. This is the Ghost right there, Shane Gostisbehere. That's his jersey. This is a Reebok version of it. I do have an Adidas, which I will show you momentarily, which is the current one they wear. But I just want to kind of fly through some of these real quick. So a few years ago, the Flyers celebrated their 50th anniversary, and this is their 50th anniversary alternate uniform with the gold trim, gold C. They wore this at home and on the road, and of course it has the established 1967. Again, this is a Claude Giroux. Gold C on the front, gold numbers, gold trim, basically everywhere. Pretty cool jersey. It was not a good season. They didn't make the playoffs that year. But I think it was 2017, yeah. And they lost to the Penguins in the state. It wasn't a very memorable season, but this uniform was pretty cool. And they just did different things with it. You know, they kind of brought a lot of different aspects of their uniform history with this one. But again, the gold was one of the big things about it. So, and I do want to show this one, which I probably should have shown instead of the Gostisbehere, because it's the same jersey, but it's a lot going on this one. So basically the same season, 2017. Oh, I'm sorry, the Flyers. I think they did make the play. I think they lost to the. I forget. Did they? I forget. I forget if that was the year they lost to the. I think they lost to the Capitals in the playoffs that year, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't know. Again, the memory isn't as sharp as it once was. But this is Wayne Simmons, who may be traded, but he'll always go down as a great Flyer. You know, he's had some great years here. Alternate A on there. I got this jersey for obviously I wanted a Simmons jersey, but I did also like it because it had the patches. It has the 50th anniversary, which was also on the Giroux. I don't know if I showed the logo. It's the same logo, and it also has the 100th anniversary patch on the sleeve when the NHL celebrated their 100th, and that patch came on the jersey too. That's one of the reasons I wanted to get it too. It had the 50th and it had the 100th logo, and then I had this one sewn on later. My mom actually sewn this on at Ed Snyder Memorial. He passed away the year they wore this logo for him on the other shoulder for a time. I kind of wish, you know, some teams obviously have done it in football over the years and whatnot when they put the team owner initials somewhere on the jersey. I almost wish the Flyers would do that with Ed Snyder. I mean, Ed Snyder meant so much, obviously, for the franchise. One of the founding fathers, if you will, of the Flyers. It did a lot for the community as far as bringing awareness to hockey. A lot of things he did with the neighborhood, with the inner city youth. Just so much. He was so much a big fabric of this community. And of course, with the Flyers, I almost wish the Flyers would put his initials somewhere on the uniform, like the Bears do with Hallis and the Lions do with Ford, I believe. I almost wish the Flyers would do something with it, with Ed's, you know, his signature or his initials rather, somewhere on the uniform, maybe on the inside collar or something, you know, somewhere on the uniform. Because if there was an owner who deserves that, I think it would be Mr. Snyder for all the things that he did, you know. And he was a very successful owner with the franchise, so, you know, maybe someday they will. But anyhow, that's the logo they did, a Flyer Forever for Mr. Snyder, as they called him. And finally, I just have a couple more here. We'll go with the current jerseys. This is the home Ivan Provorov, the Adidas uniform. Of course, Adidas took over the NHL a few years ago, and this was the the first year that they had the NHL. I got this jersey at Modell's, and it's Ivan Provorov, one of their young defensemen. And this would be the road. This is the most recent, one of the most recent pickups. I'll put Provorov over here. This is one of the most recent pickups I've had for the Flyers. This would be the road. This is also Fanatics branded. This is the Breakaway Jersey, but it's also professionally customed. So it has the professional numbers and letters going on it. But of course, it's the young goalie, 20-year-old Carter Hart. That's his uniform, his sweater for the Flyers. This again would be the road uniform. And like I said, it's professionally stitched. I actually got this at the store Pro Image, and they just, I guess, had gotten one in that was professionally done. So I picked it up. And you can tell, I mean, the Fanatics breakaway numbers do not have lettering like this. So you can tell it's the professional. It's like what the players would wear. That detailed. Very nice. And I didn't pay for professional lettering when I got it. I paid for basically a regular Fanatics breakaway jersey. But I think it's a solid jersey. I don't mind the Fanatics breakaway uniform. This is the only one I have. And like I said, fortunately, it just has the professional stitching on it. But you know, I've seen them in stores. I think it's a solid uniform. It's a cheaper uniform. You know, if you don't want to pay the full bang buck, you know, price of the Adidas, even though you can get some of those on sale from time to time, you know, the Fanatics ones isn't too bad. Not as detailed as the Adidas ones are, but, you know, they're still pretty nice. And there it is. So, Carter Hart. Hopefully we have great things from him in the future. Very young goalie, 20 years old, brought him up. I actually have one more. I guess you can call this honorary mention because the Phantoms have been the minor league affiliate to the Flyers for many years. They've moved around. They used to play at the Spectrum, then they played, you know, different places, Adirondack, and so now they're in Lehigh Valley. They've been in Lehigh Valley for over 5 years. But this is the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. This again would be Mr. Carter Hart. That's his Phantoms jersey. And I believe he wore 31 for Carey Price, which is one of his favorite players growing up. He wears 79 for a kid he's known for a while. I think he has some sort of illness or something, and so he wears his number in honors, and he says he's going to wear it for the rest of his career. That's pretty cool, and that's how you can tell that he's got his head on right, because when you do that, a gesture like that tells you all you need to know about the young man. But when he was with the Phantoms, he wore 31. So that's his Phantoms uniform. Again, would be the road uniform. And it does have the Phantom. I actually got this at a Lehigh Valley game. I saw him play at Lehigh Valley earlier in the year. And then I saw him play with the Flyers later in the year. And the Flyers logo on the other sleeve, or on the other shoulder, so you kind of know who they're affiliated with. Although you probably should know who they're affiliated with just by seeing the colors and such. But yeah, and that's basically the Phantom logo is like the Flyers logo coming at you. If you see, you can kind of see the wings, and that's pretty much what it would be. If it had eyes in front of it, that's what it'd be. But they have had that logo since their inception. That has been on the front of their uniform, their crest, just as the Flyers have had their logo since their inception on the front of their uniform. So there you have it. That's the rundown. There's others, but I figured, you know, this video is already 43 minutes and change in, so it took me that long just to show this many. I have others you didn't see, but maybe someday I'll show them too. We'll see. But like I said, I hope you all enjoyed it. Enjoy the game tonight. Let's go Flyers. Look, it's a tough one. Pittsburgh, we know it's a rivalry. It's really heated up since, you know, in recent years, and Crosby, you know, has a lot to do with that. But the rivalry is there. The rivalry is strong. It's a great rivalry in hockey. And I do appreciate the rivalries in hockey. You know, so many sports, you have so many different teams, you know, players joining forces and all. It's hard to keep that rivalry going. But in hockey, oh, they keep them going for generation after generation after generation. So Flyers-Penguins is a strong rivalry in the NHL right now. Like I said, it's the second time the two teams have played in the Stadium Series. This one didn't go too well, so hopefully this one does. Come on, guys. You are playing at the home of the Eagles. I mean, you know, just saying. You got to keep doing well in that stadium. You got to keep the name of that stadium doing good. Or the Eagles will be angry. You don't want that. You don't want Fletcher Cox coming after you. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this look at the Flyers collection, at least part of it. Maybe it brought some of you down memory lane. Like I said, the Flyers have been around since 1967. They only have the 2 cups, both before I was born. But hopefully someday I get to see them win one. They have just recently passed a 2,000 career win mark, which is they're the first the first non-original 6 team to have that many wins in their franchise history, which is pretty cool. They've had a lot of success. More years than not, they've been in the playoffs. They've been to many cup finals. They've only won the 2, but they've been a very successful franchise for many years. And I don't think it's going to be too long before they're having that success again. They're in a very difficult division right now. The Metro is a great division. It's just top to bottom, very tough. So they're in a very competitive, very good division, very strong division. Last few Cup Finals teams have played in this division, Pittsburgh and Washington. So it kind of shows you what type of division the Flyers are in, and it's always going to be tough. But the Flyers, they're making some roads. Young goalie. We'll see. I feel he's going to be really good. I know he struggled the last few games, but I think he'll be good going forward. I believe in this organization, as they say in hockey terms. They've always, done things the right way. And I think that, they're going to build this thing the right way. It might take a few years, but they're going to be back. We'll be enjoying some great seasons again at the Wells Fargo Center. They're going to do a lot of revamps with the Wells Fargo. There's a brand new scoreboard coming in next year. It's going to be state-of-the-art. Just amazing stuff going on. It is a great time to be a Philadelphia sports fan. I got to say, of course, the Eagles, what they did a few years ago, the Sixers, how they're coming along, the Phillies, the things that they're doing. Bryce Harper might be here. Who knows? We'll see, hopefully. But that's going to give us a lot of excitement. And the Flyers, the Flyers organization always is still going to be a quality run organization. They're going to try to get this thing done right. And I know for a time they've kind of, the wheels were wobbly there, but they're starting to get it back together. And hopefully, before long, they can be amongst the upper echelon in the NHL once again. So, at least this Flyers fan hopes so. So anyhow, enjoy the game tonight. Let's go Flyers tonight. And the 2019 Stadium Series in Philadelphia, my hometown. And thanks for watching. Happy start to the baseball season too for everyone out there. Looking forward to that. Let's go get Bryce Harper, Phillies. Enough waiting around. Let's just make it happen. another jersey to buy. Just when you think you. So anyhow, thanks for watching as always. To all my friends and family out there, shouts to all of you. To all my fellow collectors out there, everyone in the Jersey game, shouts to all of you. To all my fellow Flyer fans out there and Philly fans, shout to all of you. And this is MightyFan's saying peace. I will see you around the channel in the next vid. Take care, everyone. And like I said before, let's go Flyers. All right.